Well, hello friends, I hope you're having a great day today. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of Take 5. This week we are talking about the subject. It's actually a series we started on Sunday that we entitled The Cheerful Giver. And this week we are looking at the heart of the matter because that's where giving starts. It all starts in the heart. This is probably the most important thing that we'll talk about. Most of the time when you do a series, you usually don't have the most important thing first, but this really is the most important thing because if we don't get the heart right, if we don't get the motives right, then we'll never be the givers that God intends for us to be. Today, I want to look at a passage that's often misinterpreted when it comes to the area of giving and receiving. You do need to understand that the wrong perspective of any verse in the Bible can be dangerous, and it can actually feed attitudes and spirits that are not godly. So we need to make sure that we take Scripture in context. And this one, I believe, is taken out of context by many. It's Luke 6:38 that says, "Give and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap, for with the measure that you use, it will be measured back to you." Now, one of the most common mistakes that people make when they misuse that verse is to think that Jesus is only talking about money. But he's not. He's actually revealing a principle that applies to every area of our life. As a matter of fact, if you back up just 2 verses to verse 36 and take everything in context, you see what I'm talking about. Beginning at verse 36, he says, "Be merciful as your Father is merciful. Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over." So we need to understand Jesus is referring to the broad principle of giving when he says this. Basically, he's saying if you give judgment, it's coming back. If you give condemnation, it's coming back. If you give forgiveness, it's coming back. If you give financially, it's coming back. Whatever you give, it's going to come back to you. Watch this. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. So you need to think about that before we give some of the things that we give. Because if you give judgment to someone, guess what? It's coming back not as a seed. It's coming back as a harvest. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. So whatever you give, good or bad, it's going to come back in a manner that is a harvest and not just a seed. Everything in life is about giving. Money's just one area, but everything in life's about giving. You can't talk about grace and not talk about giving. Think of John 3:16. "For God so loved the world that He gave." So everything is about giving. You can't talk about marriage without talking about giving because it requires both people involved to give of themselves. You can't talk about Christian service, serving your church or even serving in your community without talking about giving. The problem, I believe, is that most people fall into the trap of perceiving this give and you will get back principle as the reward for giving instead of our motivation for giving. You have to be careful with Luke 6:38 and make sure that it doesn't become a reason that you give just to get. Make sure that you're not about getting something more than you are about giving something. Everything Jesus said prior to verse 38 points at having the right heart and the right motive. He wants us to not judge and not condemn and to forgive because we have a pure heart. He doesn't want us to forgive somebody just so we can be forgiven. That's the wrong motive. He doesn't want us to not judge someone just so they will not judge us. That's the wrong motive. He wants us to do all of these things because we've got a good heart, because we've got the right motive. God doesn't want us to catch the vision of getting. He wants us to catch the vision of giving. Motives. I can't say it enough. They are everything to God. Proverbs chapter 16 verse number 2 says, "All a person's ways seems pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. He weighs our motives. James 4:3 said, when you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. That the law of reciprocity, we'll call it, applies to everything we give. But God's main concern is how our heart fits into our giving. I wonder how God feels when His people only get excited about giving so they can get something in return. That's the wrong motive. That's misuse, and that breaks God's heart when we do that. Biblical giving is never fashioned after the perspective of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. As a matter of fact, if you'll back up even a few more verses in Luke 6, you'll find out where Jesus really gets to the heart of the matter in testing our motives. Listen to this. He says, do to others as you'd have them do to you. If you love those that love you, what credits that to you? Even sinners love those that love them. Check your motives, is what he's saying. If you do good to those that do good to you, what credits that to you? Even sinners do that. Check your motives. That's what he's saying. If you lend to those from whom you expect payment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners expecting to be repaid in full. Check your motives on your giving. Then he said, love your enemies, do good to them, lend to them without expecting to get anything back, and then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High God, because He's kind to the ungrateful and to the wicked. God is a giver, and yes, it is true, whatever we give, when we give, God will give back to us in a greater fashion, but that should not be our motive for giving. A heart with right motives should be more excited about getting to give than getting something in return. Next couple of days, we're going to look at 4 motives of the heart, bad motives of the heart that we need to get rid of. And as we get rid of these things and get our motives in line with God's perspective about giving, we'll find out that it feels good to give, because our God really does love a cheerful giver. Well, hey, I've got to get out of here. It's been good being with you today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Wednesday's edition of Take 5. Until then, God bless you. Have a great day. Remember, friend, trust the Lord. He will never fail you.